Corn tortillas only require 2 ingredients, so they're extremely simple. But just like with pasta, sourdough bread, or any dish with so few ingredients, there are a ton of subjective variables to adjust on the path to mastery. So, step 1, acquire some masa harina. The popular, globally available brand is Maseca, which is a portmanteau of masa and seca. A popular boutique brand is Masienda, which is a portmanteau of masa and tienda. Who knew Mexicans were such big fans of wordplay? Buy the smallest bag you can find. Unless you make tortillas frequently, a big 5-pound sack can go stale if you don't use it up in a year, and it develops a really off-putting flavor. All you gotta do is reconstitute the powder with hot water. But here we come to the first subjective variable. It's hard to say exactly how much water to add. Your bag of masa flour will provide a number, but consider that a starting point. This is 2 cups of corn plus 1.5 cups of hot water. I'll mix it all together until everything feels incorporated. Since there's no wheat flour, there's no gluten, so you don't have to worry about over-mixing. If I grab a little piece, I can squeeze it between 2 clean hands and observe the results. If the dough is too wet, it'll leave a residue behind. This is no good because it'll stick to every surface it touches. The press, the skillet, it'll be a disaster. This is what the dough looks like if it's too dry. Look at all those little fissures around the edge. A dry dough will crack when you squeeze it, break when you cook it, or split in twain upon taco construction. Adjust the dough's moisture level little by little until it's just wet enough to mush between 2 hands while maintaining perfectly smooth edges. It should feel like a brand new, fresh container of Play-Doh. If you must err on the side of too dry or too wet, let it be the latter because the dried corn will hydrate more fully as the dough sits. Put it in a bowl with a lid or a damp towel so it doesn't dry out. You can spend the next 10 minutes cleaning up, gathering materials for pressing, and preheating a dry pan to high heat. For this application, stay away from stainless steel pans to which the tortillas may stick. And also, stay away from non-stick pans which aren't meant to be used over ripping high heat. Cast iron or carbon steel are 2 perfect pan options, provided they're smooth and well seasoned. I'm all set up, so here's the workflow. Tear off a 2 tablespoon, 30-gram ping pong ball-sized piece of dough and immediately put the cover back on the rest of it so as not to upset its delicate moisture level. I'll sandwich this ball between 2 layers of flexible plastic. This is a grocery bag that I cut into sheets, and I keep it in the tortilla press so that it's always there for me. This is my go-to tortilla press. It's made out of heavy cast iron, which is a lot better than flimsy aluminum. It's bigger, but not as big or as expensive as this massive beauty made from powder-coated steel. You could technically roll these out with a pin or smash them under a heavy Dutch oven, but a dedicated tortilla press pays for itself in uniformity, speed, and overall fun as soon as you've made even 1 dozen tortillas within its lifespan. If the ones online are too expensive, find a Mexican market near you and get a proper press for a couple bucks. This is another skill that has to be learned with practice. I can't tell you exactly how hard to press. Try to develop a sense of when to stop pressing. Not all the way down as far as it can go, but just shy of that. Masa is forgiving, so even if you mess it up, you can roll it back into a ball and try again. Due to the physics of a levered press, one side is a teeny tiny bit thinner than the other. To compensate for that unevenness, flip it over and press it again. There is a little bit of technique to this next part as well. You want to peel the plastic off the dough so that the plastic does all the bending and flexing, not the tortilla. It's natural to want to smack this down onto the pan, but it's better to lay it down more gently like this. It'll be more likely to get perfect contact this way. Throwing it down willy-nilly can lead to wrinkles or stickage or folding over onto itself. Let that cook for about 45 seconds on one side and then flip. The second side will only need half as much time to cook. You should know that depending on who's watching, your tortilla may be expected to puff up as proof of its craftsmanship. A brag-worthy puff consists of 3 variables: a superfine grind on the masa, which the manufacturer already took care of, as much steam-generating moisture as possible, which you should have nailed during the mixing process, and a tortilla that's been pressed thinly and evenly. If all of those variables aren't perfectly aligned in your favor, you can cheat by spritzing water on the cooked surface and then flipping the tortilla back over and smashing the whole thing with a spatula. The water makes steam and the pressure seals the edges shut. To be honest, the type of person who might roast you for not pulling off a puff are gonna take issue with you using a spatula to begin with. I think you're better off just not concerning yourself with the aesthetic ramifications of puffed flatbreads and singed nerve endings. What you should be concerned with is the final step, the non-negotiable finale of any tortillas preparation. Once a tortilla comes off the pan, it is still not done cooking. It needs to hang out in a folded kitchen towel or a tortilla warmer to soften and steam. Whether they are flour, corn, store-bought, or homemade, tortillas are not ready to use until they've steamed for at least a few minutes. A well-made, freshly cooked corn tortilla can be aggressively crumpled in your hand and still return back to its original shape. This is the mark of excellent tortillas. You can't do this with a dry one, an old one, or one that you bought at the local Aldi. There's no replicating this quality because fresh corn tortillas don't stay pliable for very long. If I wanted to talk about reheating them properly, it would take up a whole other video. For now, just understand that these, like fried foods and fresh noodles, are made to be eaten immediately after cooking. In the event that you follow all my instructions and it still goes poorly, here are a couple training wheels and cheat codes that can make things easier. If everything is sticking, give your pan a thin swipe of oil first. It'll smoke up the room instantly at temperatures this high, but it'll make cooking easier if your pan doesn't have enough seasoning to prevent stickage. If your tortillas are coming out too dry for your taste, you could mix 2 tablespoons of lard or shortening into the dough before adding the hot water. It's not something I do, but it does make the final product more flexible and richer tasting. If you really want to play with Game Shark on, use a mix of masa harina and all-purpose flour. Certain brands of store-bought tortillas combine both corn and flour, which does make them more flexible and more shelf-stable, but it will not have the same taste. A masterfully made corn tortilla is such a pure expression of nixtamalized corn flavor, so I do hope you try to make it work with the traditional 2-ingredient method, but I won't deduct points if altering tradition is what it takes to get you cooking this simple staple at home. This is the kind of tolerant treatment that I provide that abuela won't. That's right, where we're going, we won't need these. This is an ad for Barkley. Barkley is my little ceramics company, and I'd like to do something different by trying to pitch you on it in the time it takes for me to make a little plate. Barkley ceramics are made by hand in Tempe, Arizona, in a legitimate studio, not in my home office like this one. I deliberately put out these Barkley brand aprons with a split leg in the middle so I could use them while cooking and also while straddling a pottery wheel. Are you not in the market for fancy ceramics? Well, this Barkley hat that I'm wearing is on sale right now, and it does ship for free. I've probably made this look a little bit easier than it actually is, but in reality, something like this would have to dry partially, then be trimmed, then dry all the way, then get fired in a kiln one time, then dipped in glaze, then fired in a kiln again at insanely high temperatures before it ends up looking something like this. If you'd like to learn more about the pottery process, or if you just want to poke around the shop, visit dinnerwithbarkley.com. Thanks for watching.